All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy Mann, and I work at LawPay. I'm the Director of Communications, and I'm so excited to join you all today, along with this incredible panel of experts to talk about going from surviving to thriving. Just to give you all a little bit of background, this group and we started actually teaming up and giving webinars last year during the pandemic when so many of us realized that our businesses needed to shift overnight and change the way we were doing things and adapt to kind of this brave new world we were all thrown into. And as we, came out of all of the learnings we had aggregated from last year, we wanted to take a look at, what are some of the things we learned? What are some of the tactics and technologies and best practices that popped up from a matter of necessity that might have some either, continued relevance today or gave us insights into what lawyers can do to not just, survive the experience of practicing law in a pandemic, but carry some of those learnings forward to continue to thrive, this year and well beyond. And so that's what today's topic is going to be. And so I'm so excited to get to serve as the moderator for today. So I'm going to introduce all of our panelists and let them tell you a little bit about themselves really quickly. Like I said, my name's Amy Mann. I'm the Director of Comms at LawPay. LawPay, for those of you who don't know, we're an online payment solution developed specifically for lawyers, giving you an easy and compliant way to accept client credit card and e-check payments online. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Mark, Maddie, and Rio in that order. So Mark, why don't you introduce yourself?
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Homer. Good to be back here. I think we were here last year, right? Like June timeframe, you said. I'm Mark Homer. I'm the author of Online Law Practice Strategies, but also the founder and CEO of Get Noticed, Get Found. We're a law firm marketing agency. So all we do is help law firms across the country grow through marketing.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Maddie, you're up next.
All right. Well, everyone, it's great to be here. I'm Maddie Martin. I'm the VP of Marketing at Smith.ai. We are a 24/7 virtual receptionist and chat service, and we are, very happy to be here again. We love the CCCBA, and we were here last year, and glad to be back with you to talk about moving from surviving to thriving with your law firm. And I'm sure that everyone here will get a lot of strategies to implement right away.
Awesome. And Rio, you're up next.
So hi, everybody. I'm Rio from CLIO, and I am the Affinity Partnerships Manager at CLIO. So if you haven't heard of CLIO before, we are the world's leader in legal practice management software. So we help you manage everything from intake to invoicing. And in my role as Affinity Partnerships Manager, I get to work with our fantastic Bar Association and Law Society partners. And I also get to do a lot of great thought leadership and speaking opportunities with these fabulous folks here. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some great data insights and helpful information with all of you today.
Excellent. Thank you, all three of you. And just so you know, in a little bit, we'll be joined by one additional panelist, Kristen Tyler from LawCLERK. So she'll be joining us as our last kind of speaker on this roundtable today. But without further ado, I want to jump into the meat of today's webinar. And so, when you think about the process and the different life cycle stages of working a case, kind of the first step that you're going to encounter is getting your name out there and getting prospects to engage with your law firm and potential clients, kind of coming in the door. And so that's where Mark has so much expertise and so much great information to share with all of us. So Mark, it's no surprise to anyone that we are coming out of a super trying year for law firms. But I remember you mentioned kind of on this webinar circuit last year that it's in those tough times when marketing really becomes critical for law firms. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, the whole concept of the rising tide lifts all boats. So when everybody's doing well, you start kind of questioning like, well, is my investment in marketing really paying off? And why am I doing this? Because marketing is an investment and it takes, resources and time and money and everything. Interesting enough, we actually, this past year, since I was out there kind of saying, hey, there's all these great case studies and you should be focusing on your marketing in the tough times. There's like, the Kellogg's and Post and Apple and all these people who invested in really tough times and then their business came out way stronger. But those are big companies, right? So what about law firms? And very fortunately, and Rio hopefully will dive into all kinds of reasons why we love the legal trends report and why we really trust it, especially from like the amount of data that they pull. So we looked at the legal trends report that CLIO came out with, and they had all this data about the average law firm last year and kind of where they started off the year. And then when COVID hit and the lockdowns and the courts closing, all these things, how much things dropped. And then even by the end of the year, a lot of people hadn't even, the average law firm, I think, hadn't recovered fully to where they were at the beginning, end of 2019, beginning of 2020. So what we were wondering is like, well, what about the firms that are doing marketing? If I'm actually out there saying marketing is important during the tough times, did it actually make a difference? So we went and looked at, all the data across clients that we work with that spend at least $12,000 a year in marketing. So it's they're spending a decent amount at a minimum side. And did, we used leads to kind of say like, where were leads, where was the actual, volume of people contacting law firms changing, as the year progressed. So when we did the data, and I think, Maddie, I think we have some slides we could probably throw in the chat. I totally forgot to do that before we got started. So if you could throw that in there, awesome. But and I have charts on this, but essentially, I'll go through the numbers because I have them right in front of me here. What we found is that law firms that were investing in marketing, Amy, like were up in the beginning of the year, just like we saw the people from the legal trends report that were up in the beginning of the year from revenue versus 2019. They were actually up 55% versus the average law firm, the CLIO report that was up 10%. But in Q2, we saw the exact same drop, right? So there was a big drop. It's actually a drop of 20%, but they were still higher than they were in 2019, right? So in 2020, we actually saw that the law firms that were marketing still managed to stay above their 2019 numbers. I mean, there was a dip, and like January and February were a lot nicer than May and June, right? But they were still doing better off than they were before. So the people that were marketing were getting those few clients who were out there looking for people during the pandemic.
I realized I was about to start talking without unmuting myself, which if we've learned anything during the pandemic, it should be always unmute yourself on the Zoom. But thank you, Mark. That's really interesting and really helpful information. Super quickly, I wanted to let everybody know who's joining us today. We've got the webinar chat here. So as we're talking and as we're kind of, going back and forth and as our panel of experts are answering some of my questions, feel free to throw some of your own in there. We'd love to kind of tackle those on the spot, or if you want to save some for the end and be thinking and taking note of those too, because we'd love to make this a dialogue as much as possible. But with that in mind, Mark, one of the things I love about getting to talk to you is that you guys collect so much fascinating data, and you're always looking at data and looking at ways that you can kind of take learnings from that and make recommendations based off of that. And so I'm sure, that y'all have some really interesting lessons learned and some valuable marketing opportunities from that you've gathered data on for the past 12 months. So what are you and your team doing for your law firm clients to take advantage of these, or what are you recommending to law firms that they do?
So we do that every year. So thanks for asking about that. So we, at the end of the year, look at what worked and, what are some new things we try? What do we test? We're always testing, right? This is marketing. Marketing is more of a science than math. So we're always testing new things. And what was working, especially last year, were massive changes and changes in the way law firms practiced and everything. So we came up with like kind of 3 trends that we're using this year to drive changes at our clients. The 3 trends really are like, the first one is the way people are finding law firms is way more fragmented than ever. And that was a change that we knew was happening, but accelerated. So we were able to look at social media traffic, for example, in second quarter last year, almost doubled the amount of traffic to a law firm website. So we knew people were spending a lot of time on social media and in a lot of places that they maybe weren't, and previously. But the fact that it actually was driving to law firm websites. And we actually know that a lot of people stay in social media. So like they were probably also using Facebook Messenger to contact a law firm that maybe nobody was even paying attention to, right? So Maddie can talk about that. We've talked about those stories way too many times. But the idea of, people finding a law firm, the action item there is you need to have your information in more places. So whether that's video, text content, blogs, you're on podcasts, you're out there on social media. And by the way, I'm sorry, that's not the best news for everybody to hear, right? It's like, I'm just trying to figure out how to do a blog, and now you're telling me to be everywhere. But there are some ways to do it. There's some strategies to find the thing you're best at and then reuse and repurpose content. And we talk about that, and we would do that for our clients. But that's one strategy, is the idea of that, being more multi-channel or omni-channel. So because people are finding your law firm in more fragmented ways. The second thing we're doing is we're taking, so we know that digital services are essentially becoming almost required by consumers. And Rio and Maddie and Amy and you guys will all talk about this. So I'm not going to go into all the data about, that we know that this is a fact. But a lot of people made all these changes last year because of, needing Zoom meetings and needing DocuSigns and needing portals and needing calendar scheduling and all these things that, all you guys will be able to talk about here. But what we found a lot of people didn't do was take all this stuff that they're doing because that's the way the client wants to work with you now. And nobody's going out and marketing it on their website, putting on your website that, hey, you don't have to drive downtown and find parking and do all that kind of stuff. We can do a Zoom meeting. We can, send your documents over if you're worried about something. You and your spouse don't have to be in the same place. They can be 2 different places. We can do a quick half-hour Zoom meeting, right? Like that kind of stuff, documents in a client portal, right? All that stuff, it matters so much to a consumer these days. So if you're doing it because you had to last year, put it on your website, market it, go out and brag about it. And the final thing that we're kind of pushing is that Google more than ever is what we're kind of calling a referral partner. So Google's becoming your biggest referral partner. It's, the legal trends report from a couple of years ago, and we continue to see this, with Google My Business being such a strong area of traffic to law firm websites and law firm phones. So we've got some clients with Google My Business that drive over half of their phone calls are just coming from Google My Business, which means they didn't even visit the website, right? They just searched for a lawyer, that came up, the reviews were good, the profile looked great, the description, it said they were open at 7 o'clock at night, right? That's something that you probably should make sure you're doing. And they reached out and called. So that is half of a lot of people's traffic. So Google is becoming this massive referral partner. Again, the Legal Trends report 2 years ago showed that half the people are asked for a referral, but the other half said, I would never ask for a referral. I'm going to go search, right? So that search engine optimization and thinking about, how you're supporting referrals, even in a digital medium, right? How is, when somebody Googles your name and things like that. So those are kind of the 3 big trends. The fact that people are finding your law firm in more fragmented ways. Digital services are kind of here and required for consumers. So market that you're doing it. And finally, think of Google as this big referral partner. And so if you spend a lot of time on your other referral partners, you should be spending some time and money on, getting that Google presence going.
Fantastic. And, one last question. I wanted to kind of dig into something that you said. You kind of mentioned this omni-channel approach to marketing and kind of how there might be this kind of easier way to kind of rinse and repeat, reuse some of the content you're creating. Do you have any kind of just advice for folks who might be joining us who kind of think, I don't even know where to start when it comes to creating content or repurposing content? Any tips or best practices there?
Yeah. So what I usually recommend is, first of all, pick the thing that you find easiest. What I find, if people can get over some of the, oh no, it's video, what I find is that law firms, lawyers can look at if you have somebody holding your iPhone, and on a tripod, and they sit right next to your iPhone behind you, and they ask you a question and you answer the person, right? You're able to get a lot of content out really fast. These are all the frequently asked questions that people normally ask as soon as they pick up the phone and call you. Start there. You could probably get 20, 30 pieces of content. And because you did it on video, you can take a snippet of the video, put it on YouTube, take a snippet of the video, put it on Instagram. You could transcribe that video answer, right? The answer, a frequently asked question answer, and create a bunch of frequently asked question articles for your website. You can take snippets of that and throw it out to Twitter and link back to the website, right? And the other cool thing is you can find somebody to outsource a lot of that too. So if you just get the video done, again, you can do it on an iPhone. Kristin talks about this, she was so scared about doing it for her law firm when she was doing, she's like, that's crazy. But once she got comfortable realizing that I'm just answering a question like I would answer on the phone, then it opened up all this content that she was able to generate at her law firm. So that's what we recommend. We do that actually with a lot of clients where we try to get them to provide a lot of frequently asked questions the way they answer the question, right? We're all going to answer questions slightly different. So be sure to have the way you describe it and get that up on your website, get that up on content, get that on YouTube. And that's one video used in a dozen places very, very easily.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark. If somebody wanted to learn more about this, are there any resources you have that people can follow up with and dig into after the webinar today?
Yeah, so we will put, and again, I don't know if we send it ahead of time, but we can put in the chat. We have like a PDF we can send of like a bunch of tools and resources. I mentioned things, Maddie will mention things, and so we have all that cataloged. I've got GNGF.tv. If this is the kind of stuff on marketing that you're interested in a little more, we've got all kinds of videos up there, as well as I do have our book that we wrote, and we have an ebook version available for people if they want to download a PDF version. So you could go spend $50 on the paperback. Be happy if you did on Amazon, but you can get one for free on GNGF.com/thrive, and I'll throw that in the chat as well. But if you go there, you can register and get the book. And of course, we're going to email you some information. And so if you want to think about another omni-channel method, it's email marketing, right? So we're going to do a drip campaign. And I always recommend that if you want to see what a drip campaign from a marketer is doing, that's kind of same formula we follow for our clients. So you'll see like testimonials in there, you'll see more help and more, so follow like that kind of drip campaign as you receive it and think about how I could use that for my firm.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate it. All right, so we're moving along in our case now. We've got our marketing set up, it's working, and we're getting those new leads and people reaching out for our services. And so that's where we can really pivot to Maddie Martin's expertise and what we can do then to help us funnel those leads and to bring those new clients in the door and get them in our system. So Maddie, the coronavirus really caused a lot of disruptions for attorneys, and specifically the smaller solo attorneys. What are some ways that you've seen attorneys kind of mitigate the potentially harmful effects of disruptions for their client experience?
Yeah, well, I think it really has a lot to do with what Mark was touching on with omni-channel responsiveness and really being aware of all the places where your business exists online, where people can get in touch with you, and first taking an inventory of all of those places and assigning roles and responsibilities within your team to make sure that there is accountability on all of those channels and that there are no drop balls, so to speak. So, when you have a VoIP phone number, for example, as a lot of attorneys got set up in the last year, maybe you had a landline in your office and now it's being forwarded to your home or home office. What we saw happen is a lot of business owners and attorneys among them didn't realize that text messages were coming through to that VoIP enabled phone number, and those messages were being missed. Now, imagine being in sort of the consumer brain, and you're used to seeing phone numbers that just have perfect parity with text numbers, and you don't think of them as a landline anymore, and you're used to texting them. What's going to happen is you'll miss leads that you're not aware of. So the most important thing is to first take that inventory. And then the second most important thing is to check those numbers regularly. And I mean, at least monthly, you should be calling your business number from either your cell phone, or better yet, have someone else call for you, because you can then be the one who answers that phone and see how many rings it took from that person who did the test call counting rings to you hearing the rings and counting rings, and seeing, is there a long delay on the caller's side before you actually get the opportunity to answer. What we have found is with certain VoIP providers, it can be as many as 7 to 8 rings, which feels like an eternity, and the person is going to hang up before you even hear that one ring, and you're thinking, well, Maddie told me that I have to be prompt to answer every channel. Here I am, the first ring, I'm answering, and then there's no one, there's dead silence. It's not necessarily your fault. Now, the way to know that it's not your fault is to test it and make sure that your systems are operating properly and that you have taken that inventory. Now, the other thing that's really important is when you have taken that inventory, do you also need to identify sort of people who are going to help you beyond the capacity of your current team? And that doesn't mean you need to add one more task to your plate. It often means bringing in vendors who can be responsive on those most important communication channels for you, so that you, your paralegal, other people who are helping you, maybe freelance law clerks, attorneys, or virtual assistants or paralegals, are actually doing the work that they're meant to do, the profitable work that they help you with. And then you have people who are friendly and responsive in screening those leads and scheduling them on the channels where you know are well protected, but are not consuming your time. Most importantly, because spam and sales calls are still extremely prevalent. And we don't want to say, be responsive, and then have a third of your day sucked up with sort of interruptions.
Sure. Thank you. That's all really, really great. And you know, we talk about it all the time, and Mark alluded to it earlier. It's not just attorneys who have been pivoting over the last year. Consumers and businesses are changing their expectations, right? So, you know, knowing that so many people's, you know, attitudes and mindsets and expectations have changed over the last year, what are some of these behavioral changes and expectations that attorneys need to be mindful of when it comes to serving consumers and businesses?
So there is a dilemma right now, and the dilemma existed sort of before, where you want to be responsive, but your existing clients demand your attention on the work that they pay you for. You can't have a million disruptions during the day. But then, who exactly is creating that disruption? If you see an unknown number on your phone, is that a spam or sales call, or is that a potential client who's never reached out to you? What CLIO data has shown is that 2 out of 3 potential clients are going to base their decision to hire on the initial responsiveness alone to that first call, first email. So if you think about it, it's critical that you pick up, but then it's also really critical that you are using your time wisely, because it's limited, you're spread thin, just like the consumers on the other side. Your workday is longer, you're doing childcare, you're doing elder care, you're being also, homeschooling professional, cook, cleaner, all the things that maybe you did before, but also now feel like, double duty. The problem is that the expectations are not just 9 to 5 as they were maybe before more substantially. They've really extended the hours. So when your client, your potential client, is just as spread thin as you are, in the exact same boat, doing homeschooling, checking on the elderly parents, making sure like their bills are paid and yours are too. There are so many things that happen during the day that a lot of the sort of home legal issues, reaching out to new, service provider like a law firm for them, is going to happen after hours. It's going to happen on the weekends when the kids are asleep or when the kids are occupied or whatever it may be. You need to be responsive, not just 9 to 5, but 24/7. And whenever it makes sense for them to reach out, that's when you need to be able to capture that lead. And it's across all of those channels that we're mentioning, but it's also critical that you demonstrate expertise upfront in steering them properly and going with your firm or maybe a referral out, because the time multiplies with the longer that conversation goes, with like the less that you screen up front. You end up extending conversations that might be very unlikely to turn into new clients that are going to pay you money. So I think the biggest challenge is identifying, after you've taken that inventory, the next most important thing is documenting what are the questions you need to ask the potential clients who are reaching out to you, to screen them and help them also determine if your firm is the right fit for their legal needs. Because if you don't ask those questions, they don't know what information to provide to you to help you make the determination if you're going to be the right fit for them. And if you haven't documented those questions, and CLIO Grow, these intake forms are available to you. If you don't use them, you don't have a repeatable process. And without that documentation, you can't delegate it. If you're thinking to yourself, I know a new lead when I see it, and I'll call it when I see it, that's great for, you, but it doesn't scale. If you can't write down what it is that makes a new lead across multiple practice areas, maybe it's different criteria for each practice area. You have to write it down first and take a stab at it. It's never going to be perfect. Most people who have intake forms change them regularly, but that will allow you to capture that and to delegate that work, which is the next critical step, so that you can actually be there for the consult instead of being there for the first conversation.
That's fantastic. We actually have an engineer here at my company that has a t-shirt that has a blank line and it says insert name, doesn't scale. And I think that that's such a great reminder, right? That our individual practices and our individual contributions, we might know exactly how it runs, but without documenting some of those, it makes it really difficult to grow and to kind of go from that surviving to thriving, to the surviving to thriving model. So kind of continuing along that line, in addition to, being really diligent in both documentation and delegation, what are you hearing that attorneys who really are thriving as it relates to firm communications, what are they doing that could be replicated at other firms successfully without a huge upfront learning curve?
So I think that, most important is to look at your client base and to also look at your law firm and to determine what are the things that are the lowest hanging fruit to improve, and that improve the customer experience and your experience as a law firm owner, to really get your systems in order, to be more system dependent and less owner dependent. That is really like the theme that I'd like for you to focus on. So some of the things that come to mind when we have that framing are, do you need a bilingual answering service so that you can provide that guidance in their language of preference, and not the one that your answering service sort of, corners you into? Are you also considering like how much you can get done on that initial call without you? What we find is that those firms that have simple message taking services find limited value, because you're still chasing down information, and actually you're chasing down the lead just to get the information that they're not a good lead. I mean, think about that for a second. It doesn't make sense. You're calling someone back. There's a 50% chance that they're going to answer. And then you've chased them down only to find out it's not a practice area that you work in, and you spent a lot of time trying to hunt them down. No, thank you. Right? Like, how do you cut that off way earlier? You ask the questions up front in that first conversation, whether it's by chat, by call, by text, by Facebook, and you get them to also setting boundaries that you're going to be the one controlling the conversation from the start. You're going to get them to answer those questions and play by your rules from the get-go. This is the information we need to determine if and how we can help you, and if not, how we can set you off in the right direction so you can get the help that you need, right? And that might be putting them in touch with the lawyer referral service or with a specific law firm that you might recommend, right? Which you should also provide to them. So I would say, like, the most important thing is to ask those questions from the get-go and to determine if there is follow-up that should be initiated with that potential lead because they're well qualified. Now, what we know is also people are not always available to accept a warm transfer of a phone call or a new lead. So I would say make sure that you have notifications enabled on your phone, either through, text or Slack, Microsoft Teams. It could be a ringing phone, but there are new ways to sort of alert you to an incoming call that might be actually quiet and unintrusive. I know for me, when I have a 5-month-old puppy, I don't necessarily want my phone ringing to wake him up when, by the grace of God, like he's sleeping for a moment during the day, when I have a Zoom call and it's quiet, and then I've got, a notification coming through my phone. Having a simple silent Slack notification show up and I see that visual reminder allows me to say, do I want to take this interruption without incurring noise in my workspace, right? And that helps in an office too. The other thing that I would say is that it's really critical that you have a calendaring solution, because if you're not available to accept sort of a new lead coming through who's been screened, that they're not lost in the ether of wondering when someone's going to follow up with them, but instead they're scheduled on your calendar. Now, we are very grateful to the CLIO team because they have made CLIO Calendar an exceptional tool, like bar none, to allow our receptionists, no matter where they are, to actually use CLIO Calendar with time zone settings that allow them to adjust to the caller's time zone and the law firm's time zone with no hiccup. That's actually really not a small matter, but they have made it a tool that is easy to use for us and easy to use for the firm. There are other tools that you can explore out there for calendaring, but they are the cheapest way to get more utility out of your existing service providers or software providers. that is a no-brainer add-on. If you think about, how much a client is worth to you, let's say it's 2, 5, 10 more thousands of dollars, right? Adding on something that's maybe $1 per call for Smith.ai as an example, it might be different prices for others if they offer it. How much more valuable is it to not have to do the chase, to have that person squarely on your calendar, knowing that callback is happening, and they have made a commitment to talk to you, which means they've probably stopped their search for other attorneys. In a world where there's more noise than ever, having the peace of mind basically locks you in as the attorney.
Fantastic. Maddie, thank you so much for all of that. I know that Mark dropped a link to a PDF with some of the resources and links that we've aggregated. Is there anything else that you'd like to direct people to check out if they want more information or more resources from you?
I would encourage you to check out the video archive that we have at academy.smith.ai. It's a great resource for attorneys at all levels of firms, all maturity levels, new or if you've been in practice for a while for yourself. And we touch on lead gen, marketing, and business operations there. So I hope you'll explore some of the content that we've made available.
Fabulous. Thank you, Maddie. All right, let's keep moving along to Rio from CLIO. I love saying that. It is just, it's perfection.
It rolls off the tongue nicely, I think.
It really does. So Rio, the 2020 legal trends report had just a ton of data about how law firms fared during the pandemic, and we've all been alluding to it already throughout this presentation. So can you just share a little bit of background on how that research was done and what a few of the key findings were?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at CLIO, it's very, very important to us that we are able to provide kind of actionable data insights to help not just our customers, but the legal community as a whole make really informed, intentional decisions about how they're running their practices. And so that's kind of where the legal trends report came from, was the desire to want to help and to do some good. So we kind of realized that through our user base, we have access to this incredible wealth of information that we can kind of harness to, put out there and make it available to people. So some of the ways that we gather information for the report is through the CLIO app data. So we have, our users are able to opt in or opt out as to whether or not they want their data kind of used and tracked, but we take user data and we aggregate it and anonymize it and kind of analyze it and break it down into, very digestible pieces. And we use metadata. We don't use any customer data, no, identifying data whatsoever. And then we take all of that information and we combine it with surveys of US legal professionals as well as US general population consumers. And we like to look at consumers who either have dealt with or have had some kind of legal issue within the last 2 years, whether they hired a legal professional or not to help them with that. And so we gather information from thousands of lawyers, thousands of consumers, and we kind of take all of that information and distill it down into the legal trends report. And the report this year, in 2021, will make the 5th report that we have done, and making it the first longitudinal study of the legal industry and trends in the industry, which is pretty fascinating and a pretty incredibly powerful tool when you really consider the implications that can have on a wider basis for law firms all over the country. And so, again, every year we like to look at kind of different aspects of the legal industry. And this year, last year, COVID happened. So how could we possibly ignore that? So we really focused our attention and our research last year on understanding how COVID impacted lawyers and law firms, from solo firms all the way up to the larger firms. We really wanted to understand how they were doing in this kind of new and changing environment. And what we found was pretty surprising. So I know Mark spoke earlier about talking about matter levels and cases, and how we definitely saw a dip around April. I mean, naturally, that was a kind of a crazy couple of months there, but that generally things were able to recover, though not as high as they were in the previous year. But an interesting piece that I really want to draw attention to is when it comes to revenue collected by law firms. So in 2020, despite the challenges presented by COVID, we actually saw that some law firms were able to achieve year-over-year growth, despite facing challenges, and solo firms in particular. And if you want to look in the slide deck, you can look at slide 47 that kind of outlines this. Solo law firms in particular were able to earn about $52,000 more per attorney, per lawyer, which is incredible in 2020, which is even more than some of the larger firms were earning at the same time. So that's a pretty interesting situation. And we'll kind of talk more about why that is and what factors influenced their ability to earn that revenue, even in the face of COVID. But something that we also noted was there were a lot of concerns. A lot of legal professionals and lawyers were very concerned about being able to make a living during COVID, about the success of their legal practices. And mostly about 72% of lawyers were really concerned that whether or not their clients would be able to pay them. And, conversely, we also see a lot of changes happening with consumers and legal consumers, particularly, a lot of consumers due to COVID, are now more comfortable with technology, and it's more important to them than it was prior to the pandemic. And that's pretty interesting, actually, when you think about it, because you would have thought that before the pandemic, consumers would have been comfortable with technology, but nope, it turns out that having to live in a Zoom world is really a catalyst to a large part of the population being able to use tools like video chat. And what's really interesting too, in terms of their consumers being more comfortable with technology, is that has impacted the expectations they have for how their legal services are delivered to them. If you want to look at slide 54, 56% of consumers would prefer video conferencing with a lawyer over a phone call, which is incredible because up until the pandemic, that wasn't necessarily the case. They would have preferred an in-person meeting. And so not only that, but 65% of consumers prefer paying for legal services electronically, which is, again, a really good indicator that they are much more comfortable with technology, and not just technology, but technology that's easy to use and is going to help them get the results they want in a very effortless way.
Fantastic. And keeping it on the technology beat for a second, another big thing that came out of the Legal Trends report was it highlighted that lawyers who were using certain technologies made significantly more than their peers who weren't. So could you talk a little bit about what some of those key technologies are and why they're so important?
Yeah, absolutely. And a minute ago when I said, that we're talking about solo firms who are shown in blue, if you look at slide 59, solo firms who adopted these kind of three technologies I'm going to talk about in a second earn significantly more revenue on a per lawyer basis than larger firms and other firms who didn't use these technologies. And those three technologies that have become so quintessential and important to kind of thriving during the pandemic and going from surviving to thriving, if I want to allude to the title of our session here, is is three different ones. So client intake and legal CRM. So we're talking about client relationship management software. The second is online payments. So the ability to accept credit cards, to offer payment plans, to offer some payment flexibility. And lastly is client portals. So giving your clients the ability to get case updates, to share documents securely, giving them one simple place where they can really go to kind of connect with you and do everything that they need in their kind of during their legal working on their case with you. And so part of the things that make these technologies so valuable is their adaptability and the ability they have to allow particularly small firms to multitask. As a small, if you're running a small firm, if you're a solo attorney, you wear a lot of hats and you don't have time to be chasing down every single lead that has come your way. Maddie just talked about, like, you can spend all of this time chasing down a lead, but if you don't ask the right questions up front, you might find out that, well, that was just a big waste of time. So with a client intake software, not only are you able to screen clients and leads coming through the door, you're also able to track where those leads are coming from and track where those leads are in terms of their process with getting hired from you. So it really allows you to just kind of check a whole lot of boxes right from the get-go, and also make sure that you're not letting anyone slip through the cracks, right? You are able to take advantage of everyone who reaches out to your law firm because you have it set up in such a streamlined way. In terms of online payments, I mean, it's in this day and age, if you're not taking online payments, like, what are you doing? I mean, we are so used to using credit cards, debit. We're so used to paying electronically, and everything that we do, it is the same for legal services. And I mean, at LawPay, I know you guys are big fans of online payments, but it provides
I did it better myself.
Yeah. It provides so much flexibility for clients who particularly, as we have found in recent years, a lot of consumers have about $400 in their bank account, and they couldn't deal with a legal issue that just sprung up out of nowhere. That's a big financial burden for people. So giving them the ability to pay in a way that is actually going to work for them is a huge, huge win for law firms, and ensures that you have some revenue stream coming in, even in the face of the challenges presented by COVID. And lastly, with client portals, this is a really, dynamic tool, because it allows you to not only provide your clients with some excellent customer experience, lets them, stay up to date with what's going on. They can also share documents with you easily. So you're not having to send them back and forth through email. You're not having to, teach your client how to use a scanner or any of these things. It really allows you to go paperless. And that also lets you work from anywhere. So which is a big plus. But it also just helps you kind of automate everything and keep everything in one spot. And it's a really big win for clients because they have visibility into the legal process and what's going on. And it's a really big win for you because you're not trying to track down millions of emails and did I send them this thing? Did I send them that thing? And yeah, it's really a huge time saver.
That's fantastic and so timely for your recommendation. What our attendees don't know is we were literally discussing email efficiencies as a group before we kicked off this webinar. And exactly what you're describing sounds like it would be a perfect solution for every pain point we had discussed in our own lives. So one last question for you, Rio. Technology is fantastic, but obviously it's not the only factor in a law firm's success. So do you have any other tips for lawyers who are looking to find ease in their business and to really take their firm to that thriving standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that gets overlooked a lot is kind of the administrative and kind of process back end of things. And my first thing I would say is that having a process behind everything you do is very important, but not just having a process, documenting that process, ensuring that everybody in your law firm understands those processes, has visibility into the documentation around them, and that you're also revisiting those things. So giving your employees or anyone you work with the ability to say, hey, I was reading over this process and then it looks like maybe this isn't going to work or that isn't going to work, and being open to changing, revisiting, and revising these things so that they are still working efficiently and the way that they're intended to. So definitely document everything, because having it all in your head is not going to help anybody. So keep it out there and keep it visible. And I think another thing would be thinking about your law firm in terms of from the client's perspective, and thinking about what you do from a client-centered way of thinking. So supporting your clients through their journey with you, understanding what their experience is with your law firm, and not doing that in a way that it sacrifices your internal efficiency, but also helps to support your own well-being and your own staff's well-being. And I think if we start to think about creating effortless experiences for our clients and also for our law firms, then that kind of helps to ensure that you're going to thrive through a very difficult period when a lot of people are just focusing inward rather than thinking about the broader impacts of the work that they're doing and the processes in their law firms. And I think the last thing would be keep learning, keep asking questions, keep coming to, watching webinars like this, watching sessions, just seek out information, because there's so many incredible resources out there. I know Maddie and Mark have already posted some fabulous resources, and they're really, really valuable. Definitely take advantage of the Legal Trends Report. We've got some incredible insights and information, and it's all free. You can access all of it for free on our website. I'll post it in the chat in a second. But yeah, those of you, keep learning and asking questions. Very, very important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rio from CLIO. And like you said, if you could throw some of those links in the chat so that the folks on the call today can go and check out some of the fantastic resources that CLIO has to offer. With that, we're going to do a small little pivot, and I'm going to hand my MC hat over to the fabulous Kristen Tyler, who joined us.
Hey, everyone.
Kristen,
sorry to join a little bit late. I had myself double booked, but I'm happy to be here now. And thank you, Amy. So keeping right on with the program, I think, Rio brought up some fantastic points about online payments and how important it is. So let's turn to that topic with Amy from LawPay. So Amy, I know for a lot of lawyers, talking about the money side of things with clients can be uncomfortable. Actually, my mother-in-law is just in the process of retaining attorney, and she's been, emailing and calling with this woman for about 2 weeks now. And finally the lady was like, yeah, so I really like talking with you, but I also have to feed my children. So we're going to need to formalize this a little bit more. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, it took her 2 weeks. I wouldn't have gotten that far. But anyways, why, even though this can be uncomfortable for a lot of attorneys, why is it such an important topic for lawyers to address?
Absolutely. It is and can be an uncomfortable topic for some lawyers to approach, because most folks, went to law school to do the lawyering side, right? Not the kind of business, bookkeeping, payment side of things. But at the end of the day, it's getting paid that helps you push forward and grow your business. It's that bread and butter that keeps the lights on, that lets you take that next case and pay your staff and keep growing. So it's an absolutely essential part of running a law practice. Now, the good news is, there are some best practices and strategies that you can put in place to not just make that part of running your business easier, but to actually really thrive from a financial standpoint. I always make the joke with this group that handling the billing and payments part of your practice isn't unlike starting a new gym routine, right? The first day it's the big bad that you dread and you don't want to go. And we build it up to be way more than it is in our mind, only speaking from personal experience. But, you go that first day and you get it under your belt, and then you go the next time and it's a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And before you know it, it's a part of your life and a part of your system that you can't live without, and you don't have to think about it anymore. And so I encourage you to look for ways to make billing and payments part of your schedule and give it its fair due, but don't let it take more of your emotional energy and more of your time than it needs to. So start putting really strict parameters and practices around when you handle the billing and payments part of your business. Figure out, what can I do at intake every single time and just have it run automatically in the background? What are the days that I'm going to send out my invoices? And what are the days that I'm going to follow up on unpaid invoices? Build those into your workflow so that you know when to predict them, and it's not just a looming black cloud hanging over your head, raining sad Charlie Brown tears on you. Just give it its space, but don't let it become more than it is. And you'll find that once you give these different tasks just a set place in your schedule, they're going to become so much easier for you to address, knock it out, and move on with your day. And you'll find that your cash flow and your baseline revenue is going to grow from having that discipline and doing things programmatically.
Absolutely. And I'll just chime in that, if this is something you're really uncomfortable with, maybe evaluate, is this the best use of your time, or is there someone on your team that you could delegate some of these functions to? A lot of law firms have billing managers or office managers that can help with this, or even, full-time or part-time CFOs. And again, this is a great thing to delegate if you need some help with this topic. But
absolutely.
Yeah. So Amy, I would also like to know from your perspective there at LawPay, what trends are you seeing in the payment space, and specifically with legal, because I know you work with a lot of different industries there across the Affinity network. But, what are some of the trends you're seeing that will affect lawyers and how they do business in light of their clients' expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. Rio kicked this topic off so perfectly by saying, if you're not accepting online payments, what are you doing? Because this is really where people, even pre-pandemic, were in this mindset, right? We've become this Amazon-driven, Netflix-driven culture where payments are seamlessly integrated into the other things that we're doing. I always bring up the fact, like, I couldn't tell you the last day that I paid for Netflix, because it bills automatically. It happens every week, and I can, just enjoy my shows seamlessly with the click of my remote. And so people have already become accustomed pre-pandemic to this type of interaction with billing and payments. If you've got the slide deck open, you can look at slide 65. As far back as 2018, 75% of people preferred to pay with a credit or a debit card. About the same percentage had switched to paying all of their bills online. Even more had switched to a paperless billing model. And finally, 70% of people surveyed said that having multiple ways to pay a bill actually increased increased their satisfaction with a service provider. And that's such a big deal when it comes to expectations, to driving repeat clients, to getting referrals from clients, really meeting them where they're at and exceeding their expectations is such a critical part. So I'd say kind of the first trend that we've observed is just this, shift into the online payment sphere overall, which obviously the last 12 months has only accelerated and made this even more commonplace. The second trend I would highlight is really the increased interest in and adoption of payment plans or recurring billing profiles. On slide 66, you can see that 72% of consumers said that they would prefer to pay legal fees via a payment plan, but only 53% of law firms were equipped to offer this option. And that's just a huge opportunity for attorneys out there. Rio said it so perfectly. Most Americans don't have the money on hand to be able to write a check for a $5,000 retainer payment. And a big fear that came out of the Legal Trends report that people were reporting was attorneys were expressing concern that their clients wouldn't be able to pay for their legal bills. What a great gift recurring billing and payment plans are for both the attorneys and for their clients. This really opens the door for attorneys to continue offering their services to new and existing clients, for people who otherwise might not have been able to afford the services of a lawyer to retain that. And for the process really to benefit both parties, by putting a client on a payment plan, like we said, maybe they can't pay $5,000 up front, but maybe they can very manageably pay $500 per paycheck. So that's an arrangement you can work out with your client at intake that they're going to be able to pay. They're going to, be confident and rest assured that they're getting the legal representation and expertise that you can provide for them. As an additional benefit to you, you're going to have a predictable revenue and a predictable cash flow coming into your office. So that's going to help you even better forecast for your business. And with all of those benefits, that's not even mentioning just the sheer efficiencies that come into place when you put a client on a recurring billing process and profile. You're already doing, a huge amount of intake when you bring a new client on board, and there's great processes that both Smith.ai and CLIO can help you out with. So adding a recurring billing form into these processes for intake is just a super simple way to knock that out when you're taking care of the rest of your upfront matters as well. And then it can just run in the background, so you're not having to repeatedly send out bills or remind people to pay, and your client isn't having to track down their checkbook or track down their payment information to pay you on the fly. It just happens. You both get notified whenever a payment runs through, so everybody's in the loop. And it's just a hugely efficient model for meeting your needs and meeting your clients' needs just seamlessly.
Well, that's for sure. And one thing I think it's important to highlight is for any of our attendees, if you're hearing a lot of information today, we've kind of opened up the fire hose, so to say, and it's a lot to take in. So if there's certain tools or things you want to try out here, know that all of these companies and all of any other company out there that you might be considering is going to have a support team to help guide you and walk you through the process of getting started. And I can say firsthand that in addition to being in legal tech, I'm also an attorney. And so my firm uses LawPay, and they really have done a nice job of helping lawyers get those things, get their accounts started, and give them tools to market that as well, which I'm sure Mark would say is all the more important to let people know that you take online payments. Mark, Amy, can you tell us a little bit more about the process for an attorney just getting started with your team to set up online payments and how that works?
Sure. Getting started with online payments is really simple if you're working with LawPay, or we're also integrated with CLIO, and we power CLIO payments. And in either situation, it's actually a very painless process. Like Kristen mentioned, we've got a team here who can walk you through the whole thing if you want somebody to go through it with you, or if you complete your sign up yourself, it's about 15 minutes, all said and done. You can be accepting payments usually within 24 hours. You can take that first payment. And we've really designed our system to work with the way you're already running your business. So we don't want you to have to relearn the way you run your office just to work online payments into the process. So if you're already using CLIO, great. We're there. You can use it within the app you're already using. If you send out email invoices to your clients, you can add your LawPay payment page link to that email. Your clients can click to pay. You don't really have to change anything with the way you're running your business. And all of a sudden, boom, you're going to see those payments come in. We've got recent data that shows that 62% of invoices are paid the same day they're sent out when an electronic payment option is provided. And so put that power in your client's hands, leverage the technology and the processes you're already using, but give your clients that empowered way to pay the way they want to. And like Kristen said, if you want somebody to walk you through it or show you all the ins and outs, we've got a full team here in Austin, Texas, where it is hot, ready to help you out and walk you through.
Coming in hot. I like it. All right. All right. Let's see. A few more questions. Are there any other tips or advice you can give to attorneys who are trying to get more money in the door and collect on that AR, or have we already covered all of those?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, obviously, as I mentioned, you want to use online payments and credit cards to your advantage. Get people set up from the get-go if you can. You know, have your fee agreements echo your credit card authorization forms, so you can just pull that in and take care of all of that at once. The more you can do up front, the less you have to do on the back end. And then, like I said, just build those processes, you know, build structure into your day and know when that's going to be happening. Bill clients regularly, predictably, and if possible, close to payday. You know, there's nothing that clients hate more than when it's been, you know, months after their case wrapped up and then they're still, you know, they're getting the bill then. If any of you have ever gone through like a big medical procedure and you're getting billed for things, you know, a year later, that's such a frustrating experience. So get that bill out the door as soon as possible. And if you time it close to payday, you're much more likely to catch a client when they've got the funds available to pay for that. And then finally, if you do need to follow up on unpaid invoices, make sure that the person that that client is most familiar with is the one reaching out, because that's just going to resonate better. So if you worked the case yourself, try to be the one to work out. If they spent a lot of time working maybe with another attorney in your office or a legal assistant, have that person reach out at the point of contact. Their name in an email is going to jump out a lot more than someone who is completely unfamiliar with them and that they don't know. And so let's put these tips into practice and just stick to them. And like I said, it'll become easier and easier and just be more part of your regular routine as you move forward.
Great practical advice. Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate that. And I know there was a question about where the slides are available. If someone, there you go. There's a link to the slides right there. Thank you, Maddie. All of the stuff we're talking about is in there. We just, you know, try to facilitate more of a conversation here with the group discussion rather than slide by slide. So definitely grab those slides. They are there for you. So now it's my turn. I'll try to wrap this up and give you some insight as to what my team is seeing in terms of business models and new trends. And of course, we would love questions. So don't be shy. If you've got questions, please start dropping those in now. And of course, all of our contact information is included on the very last slide of those slides. So if there's any one of us you want to reach out to directly, we're happy to get in touch with you and answer questions one-on-one. But before I start, since I wasn't here at the beginning, I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Kristen Tyler. I am an attorney. My background is practicing in trust and estates. But more excitingly, about 3-4 years ago, I helped co-found a legal tech company called LAWCLERK. You can find us at lawclerk.legal. And in a nutshell, what we do there is help busy attorneys get connected with freelance lawyers when they need help from time to time. That's in a nutshell. Now, as you can probably imagine, being mindful of, you know, we're working with attorneys who are very busy. They are growing their firms and they're trying to evaluate the best way to do that. We have a lot of discussions about business models and, you know, what were the good things about the way that law firms have worked for years and years, where there's, you know, a few partners and a bunch of associates and they bill hourly and they have a big brick building with lots of leather-bound books and gavels and scales of justice. You know, like that's worked great for a lot of decades and it's brought a lot of lawyers a lot of success. But because we have so many new and different tools out there, especially in the world of legal technology, it is really causing lawyers, I don't even want to say the next generation of lawyers, because I talk to lawyers at all phases of their careers who are looking at ways to do things differently and mix up that traditional law firm business model. So looking back over the past year, I think, and my slides start around 77 if you want to check them out. But over the past year, I think that one of the biggest silver linings of the pandemic for a lot of attorneys, it's really, if you think of the legal industry as a snow globe, it's like the pandemic came in and just shook it up. And as things started to settle back in, you could decide where you wanted things to go and how you wanted to do them. And it was kind of a really unique chance to have a refresh and to try new things for a lot of attorneys that have been wanting that opportunity for a while and hadn't had time to find a way to explore it. So overwhelmingly, the lawyers that I'm talking to are looking for ways to do law better. And that means a lot of things. It means that they don't want to spend every living and breathing moment of the day in their office. They maybe don't even want the office anymore. They want more flexibility and freedom to practice when and where they want. They want to connect with, the right kind of talent they need to staff their firm, not necessarily someone that's going to be, down the hall from them. It might be someone that's across the country. And so lawyers are really exploring what works best for them, what works best for their clients, and mixing it up. And what is one of the biggest reasons underlying that driving force? Well, I think that in a lot of ways, as you've heard throughout this program, consumers are really demanding it. There's been so much uncertainty all through the pandemic. It's exposed a lot of cracks in a lot of different industries, and consumers are in many ways not willing to accept the status quo from legal anymore. They don't like hourly billing. They don't like the unknown abyss of ongoing litigation and how long are things going to take, and will this case ever end? So they are looking for ways to find more certainty and still access the legal services that they need. And if you don't believe me that some of these factors are really important when a potential client is meeting with and vetting possible attorneys to retain for their case, there's some great data on this from, of course, the CLIO Legal Trends Report. So on slide 80, I've borrowed some of their information there. And this slide was looking at an analysis of what makes a lawyer more hireable according to consumers. So what makes a lawyer hireable? Some of the attributes that led to a lawyer being more hireable included offering payment plans and fixed fees, allowing electronic payment, of course, offering unbundled legal services. We'll talk about that. And also using subscription plans. So a lot of interesting things to unpack there, but they present a lot of opportunities for we as an industry to do law different and to do law better. Let's look at a few of those. There's 4 of them that I've kind of picked out that I want to go over. I want to talk about flat fees. I want to talk about minimum fees. I want to talk about unbundled services and subscription plans. We're going to do it quick in case I see some questions coming in. But okay, flat fees. This one is one that a lot of lawyers like the idea of, but they're scared that they're going to come out on the losing end of the deal, if you know what I mean. They know that when they bill hourly, they're going to bill for every minute of work they did and hopefully get paid for the majority of it, although collection rates can make that a challenge. Whereas with a flat fee, they know that on the majority of the flat fee work, if they price it in a reasonable way, corresponding to the value and the time of the work, the client's going to win and they're going to win. But of course, you're always going to have 1 or 2, I call them stinkers. I do almost all of my work flat fee, and you're always going to have 1 or 2 stinkers every year that just ruin the deal. But to me, the benefit of not having the stress of having to bill my time hourly outweighs the 1 or 2 where I maybe come out behind. And to me, even those one or two where maybe economically I come out behind, I'm still helping a client. We're still making a difference in the community, and that matters too. So the areas that we're seeing a lot of flat fee work, of course, include my area, estate planning. That's a big popular area to do that. Some business transactional work, we see that in some sorts of business services. And immigration is another really popular area that offers certain flat fees for different types of visa applications, green cards, etc. So consider that. And I think it's a good one if you are exploring a flat fee. Find a colleague in your same area, your same practice of law, who maybe is offering a flat fee and pick their brain. Talk it through with colleagues. And at the end of the day, one of the best things about being a solo attorney or at a small firm is if you try something out and after, you give it a reasonable go, it's not working, you can shift gears. You can fail fast and go back to that hourly billing, but you might as well give it a try. Okay, another really unique hybrid type billing model that we're seeing emerge in more and more law firms is this whole idea of a minimum fee. So with that, the areas I see this the most in are criminal cases and also DUIs, traffic cases. So the whole idea with the minimum fee is you charge a flat fee. That's the minimum fee. You're going to pay this one minimum flat fee. And if we have early success in the case, that's all you're going to pay. However, if the case progresses past, a certain stage, a certain hearing, litigation, then it will convert to an hourly billing model. So that can be a good one, so that if if you're savvy and you've practiced a lot of years in your area and you are a good negotiator at getting quick, very successful, favorable outcomes for your client, that can be a big win for you and for the client as well. And you might as well charge that minimum fee for it. And it's as long as it's still a reasonable fee for the work you're providing. So that's another one to consider, minimum fee. Another one that I have learned a lot more about over the last couple of years are unbundled services. Now, unbundled services is where you come in for a limited engagement. You handle one piece of a case, whether it's preparing one document, it's going to one court hearing, it's helping the client go to a mediation, whatever it may be. You're doing one very specific piece of work and then you're out, unless they engage you again for another piece of work. And when before I took time to learn more about this, I had the misperception that, gosh, these poor attorneys doing this unbundled thing, piece by piece, they must be, eating ramen noodles, and how can you make a living doing that? And let me tell you, the more I learned about it, I couldn't be farther from the truth. Some of these attorneys are incredibly busy. And, the nice thing about unbundled services is that it's very clean. You're in and you're out. You don't get these messy, drawn out things that just bog you down for years. And if you get very efficient at them, a lot of attorneys offer these unbundled services, again, on a flat fee, on very specific types of services that they have mastered and crafted over the years. And so it can be a very efficient, sometimes much lower stress way to earn a living. And they do earn a very good living doing this type of work. So that's another one that can meet your clients' needs, make your services more accessible to more clients, and still earn a good living. And last but not least, subscription plans. Okay. And this is essentially a payment plan as well, right? Although kind of, but no, you could offer a flat fee. Sometimes I offer a flat fee and I let my client pay it in 2 or 3 installments. To me, that's a payment plan. A subscription plan is really meant for ongoing work that doesn't really have a set end date. We are seeing attorneys really excel with subscription plans in areas like where they are serving as outside general counsel for a business or a small business. Likewise, if they are giving counsel to a nonprofit, or I also know a lot of attorneys that do various work for like online creatives or different, digital companies online only. They need that ongoing advice and input to hopefully avoid larger legal problems. And it's a great way for them to access the services they need. They know how much they can factor into their monthly budget to get that help. And like I said, also talk to a lawyer sooner when they encounter a problem, rather than trying to DIY it and getting themselves into a lot of trouble. So with all of these different, types of business models, there are pros and cons. And of course, there's pros and cons with hourly too. But as more and more lawyers are trying them out, all too often, they are seeing success with them. When they market these services appropriately, they are attracting more clients. Thanks to some of these other tools we have analyzed, they can process these clients very easily, especially if they're high volume. And they then find the pain point of, well, how do you manage this growth? And what are we going to do? We've got all this work. And that's where you need to also flip and look at modern staffing models. And again, the tradition has been, you have the partners in the firm, you have the associates, maybe a few paralegals, a whole bunch of legal assistants, and that's great, but it also means a lot of overhead. It also means a lot of management time and effort. And, a lot of people want to have a leaner, meaner machine, only get help when they need it, to get deep levels of expertise. And that's why when it comes, especially to the lawyering side of the work, more and more attorneys and law firms are incorporating virtual associates or freelance lawyers into their firm for either project-based work, or sometimes a deeper level of work, say, 40 or 80 hours a month on a subscription-based relationship. And this can be a really great way to, again, find high levels of talent. These aren't newbies that are doing this kind of work, and to allow you to get just the amount and kind of help you need when you need it. Outsourcing makes a lot of sense financially and stress-wise. And I also just want to wrap it up by saying, for any of you who maybe have daydreamed about charting your own career as a freelance lawyer, there really has never been a better time, thanks to different technology platforms like LawCLERK and numerous others. There are just countless opportunities out there and growing every day. So if you've ever, caught yourself staring out into space, wondering if you could do that, you can, and the timing has never been better. So with that being said, I know we're coming up on time, and I think it'd be great to go around and let everyone give final thoughts. And since I know a couple of our people have obligations right after, we'll kick it off with Maddie for final thoughts, and then Mark, and then Rio.
Okay, thanks so much, Kristen. And man, I just echo everything that you said. It's a great time to explore, alternative business models. And I think the key thing for me to keep in mind, and that I recommend often, is flexibility. Like, look at the systems and solutions that you're evaluating right now, that you're using right now. And when you're looking at new solutions, can that flex and grow with you in the future? Is it compatible with your budget now and in the future? And does it allow you to make changes? Does it play well with the rest of your systems? I think flexibility is really the name of the game, so that no matter what comes, since we know that plenty of variability is in store for us, whether we're prepared or not, make sure that you have your systems working for you and that they are adjustable at a moment's notice.
Okay. So I think for me, the final thought would be, if you could kind of put your client in the center and think about all the things you do from that full life cycle of a client, and every step of the way think, like, how do I provide more service in market and remind them of the service I'm providing, whether that's in the awareness, kind of like, learning about your firm stage, the execution, or even, like follow up and constant, like top of mind awareness afterwards to drive referrals and great reviews.
Wonderful. And so I think for myself, I would like to just echo what I said earlier about keep learning and keep asking questions. I mean, you've seen Mark, Maddie, Kristen, and Amy all share some incredible information and incredible resources about all of the different things that are possible out there when you're running your law firm. So keep exploring and keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to try something new. And if it doesn't work, well, try something else.
I couldn't have said it better, Rio, that's for sure. So, and I would just echo, it's Lawyer Wellbeing Week. And if you're, finding yourself continually working too many hours, working more than you want, stressed out, not sleeping, all those things, you owe it to yourself and your clients to get help, whether that means a technology-based solution or a human-powered based solution. You really owe it to yourself, so don't wait. And with that, thank you, Anne, for hosting us all today. Thank you to all of the attendees. Again, if you have questions directly for any of us, don't hesitate to reach out.